Hi everyone, it's Rachel. Welcome to the Sweet and Simple Home. Today we are going to talk about one of my all-time favorite topics in the whole wide world, and that is books and what I have been reading this summer. I put on my special t-shirt that's Heart Books because I love books. I'm going to share with you what I've read this summer, my thoughts on some of these books. So I'm hoping this video can be like a calming, kind of chill video that you can enjoy and watch. You can let me know what you're reading down in the comments. I'd love to hear if you have thoughts on some of these books or suggestions for what I should read. I'd love to hear that. Grab a cup of coffee, cup of tea, whatever you'd like to drink, and join me and we'll talk about books. I have a reading journal and I'm going to be heavily dependent upon what I've written in this journal to help me remember what I read this summer, because I have a goal of reading 100 books this year. But I like to track what I'm reading and kind of take some notes on it. It helps me remember like the good things and the bad. So to help me remember some of my thoughts on these books, I have a little notebook that I've turned into a bit of a reading journal. I've shared this with you in past videos. I do have a new reading journal that I will share with you as well in a little bit, but this just helps me remember details and what I thought about them and even the order in which I read these books. So I'm going to start with what I read at the beginning of the summer leading up to what I've read within the past week. In June, I started with the book 12th Night. I participate in a little book club that a friend of mine hosts, and this was the June book. And I read it, and I had kind of a bad attitude about reading Shakespeare because I just feel like it's not super accessible to the modern reader. I found one that had a translation on one side of words that maybe us modern day Americans wouldn't know, and that was really helpful. I borrowed that from our school library. Shakespeare is hard for me and I'm working on it, but there were a lot of things in that book that are like cultural sayings that are originally from that book, which was kind of fascinating. So it was, for Shakespeare, one of the more approachable books that I've read. So this is the next book I read in June. This is called Home by Marilynne Robinson. This is book 2 of 4 by Marilynne Robinson in this series, the Gilead series. So the first one is just called Gilead and the second one is called Home. And I hope to read the next one in the fall. I really enjoy her writing style. It's very approachable. She deals with hard things in a way that feels very human, very normal. Family dynamics to work through and faith issues to work through, and she just makes it very real, and her writing is beautiful. So I very much enjoyed this book. So I recommend this series. I'm looking forward to reading more of it. So the next book I read is one that I just absolutely loved, and that was Rebecca by Daphne Demure. I hope I'm saying that right. Wow. I had heard good things about this book from another YouTuber. I really like him. His channel is Tristan in the Classics. He raves about Rebecca, and rightly so. I found myself thinking about this story when I wasn't reading and wondering what I actually thought about the plot and what I agreed with in the plot and what I disagreed with in the plot. It's one of those books that makes you think. It's not all pleasant and happy. In fact, most of it isn't. But it makes you think about why that matters. So I really, really like this. The setting is so great for fall if you're looking for a fall read. It's kind of like Agatha Christie meets Jane Eyre in the sense that there is a strong female lead, but she's a little bit unsure of her role. The setting and the fact that there's a bit of a mystery involved make it feel a little bit more Agatha Christie. So if you like that vibe, you would really like this book. This was one that I found at Goodwill, and I was so excited to find it because I'd heard good things. This might be one of my favorites from the whole year. I've been looking at this a lot. I didn't leave myself enough room. I just made this myself. Definitely a first step in keeping a reading journal. I got a new one that I'm going to start dabbling in, and this is Clever Fox. And this was gifted to me from Clever Fox, so full disclosure, they gave it to me to try, see if I like. I do like it a lot, and I think this will really help me in my reading tracking to have more space and room for my thoughts. So it starts out with an index where I can list off the books that I have read. So I like this because I have not been keeping a page count in my homemade journal, and I would like to know. I'd have to go back into all the pages, and I just don't know if I can do that. So starting from here on out, I do want to keep track of the pages I've read. I do feel like that would be very satisfying to know. It has a spot for me to keep track of the books I've read in each month. There's a spot for years. So you could keep this for 2 years and be able to have the same journal, which I really like that. The daily reading tracker. So for each day, if you read or not, you can check it off. And that to me is like the next step in accountability. I have been asked by you guys, when do you find time to read? And I do listen to audiobooks, and I do count that. I feel like listening to a book is a way to take in a book. It doesn't work for everyone. For me, I have to be doing monotonous tasks. So if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, fine. I try to have an audiobook going and then at least 2 books available. So I try to keep one upstairs, one downstairs. If I'm going to pick up my son from practice, I'm going to have the book with me, because even if it takes him 2 minutes to walk from the field to my car, that's 2 minutes of reading I can get done in a day. If I am waiting for the pan to heat up or the water to boil, you can bet I'm sitting there with the book next to the stove. I do try to fit in reading every day, and I think this tracker will be incredibly helpful moving forward. Here's where I am the most excited. The book review has lots of space, and this is one thing I wish I had done better when I made one for myself, but I really appreciate Clever Fox for giving readers time to reflect on what they've read. If you don't come away with anything, what's the point, right? I like this little circle where you can color in how much you enjoyed it. Excellent. This will really help me when I am going back to remember whether or not to recommend a book to people. Although the homemade one really helped me get started, I really think this design fits the way I think as a reader and what matters to me as a reader. I chose this really pretty mint color, but it comes in lots of colors, and I'll be sure to link it below. So thank you, Clever Fox. I do enjoy it, and I'm excited to use this moving forward in my reading. The next book I read was one I checked out from the library. It's Avi's latest book for kids. I like to read children's literature because it helps me kind of know what my kids will like, and Avi has written a lot of really great historical fiction for kids. This one was called, I'm going to look at my notes here, Lost in the Empire City, and it was set during the early 1900s. So it's an immigration story of a family coming in from Italy. What I like about Avi is he doesn't necessarily hold back on all the hard things that happened in history. He kind of lays out the truth of it, that it wasn't easy, that it was really sad, that there's a lot of corruption, and he kind of lets you draw your own conclusions, which I really appreciate about him as an author. So I thought this would be a good read for boys. A lot of fiction, historical fiction from World War II, and this was a different time period, which I thought was awesome. The next one I read was These Strange Ashes, and I shared this in a book haul as well. So glad I stumbled upon this at the thrift store. I mean, it's obviously an old copy, but it's by Elizabeth Elliot, and it's about her days in ministry, in mission work, before she married the famous Jim Elliot, who was martyred in Ecuador. She's talking about her days being a single missionary woman, and it was fascinating, and it kind of made me get over myself and some of the things that I get whiny about. And I felt like her writing was really good in this one. Like, it was very easy to read. It was more narrative, whereas some of her other books can read a little bit choppy. This one I felt read really well, and it's a short book, so it was an easy read to get to in a day. Really, I think I finished it in a day. I think this is my new favorite Elizabeth Elliot book. All right, so the big one that I read in June that took up most of the month for me, and I had to take breaks from because it started to hurt my brain, was Dune. Again, I've heard a lot of great things about this. I've heard it's kind of like the Lord of the Rings of sci-fi. Sci-fi is a genre that's not supernatural to me to read. I tend to be more of a historical fiction, mystery kind of gal. So it definitely pushed me outside my comfort zone. There's been movies made about it, and I did not watch it until after I read the book. I still need to watch the second movie, but I watched the first one after I finished the book, and that did kind of help because there were so many times I was very confused. I was just like, what is happening in this story? let's see, it's like almost 700 pages long. So it's a commitment. It's not for kids in the sense that there's drug abuse, there's concubines, there's some sexual things, violence, though it's not like hard to read violence. But the main character is sort of like this Messiah type character. And you watch him kind of like stand up to his full height and face some of these pretty major challenges in this really hard to live in environment that's just sand. It's basically a planet of sand. I won't give any spoilers, but interesting ending. And I'm proud of myself for tackling this book. But if you're not a sci-fi person, this is one that's like a commitment. Like you're going to have to buckle up and deal with being confused. Maybe even watch the movie before, because that would have maybe helped me. And I normally don't say that. But it probably would have helped me understand some of the things that were happening in this book. The next book I read in June was Under the Greenwood Tree by Thomas Hardy, and this was one I listened to on audio. This was such a pleasant book. I had read a Thomas Hardy book in the spring that was really kind of dark and intense, and I had heard from others that Under the Greenwood Tree was much more lighthearted. And so I listened to it and I really enjoyed it. I think it'd be a good book for Christmas time because it starts at Christmas and it kind of has this very sort of festive feel at the beginning of the book. So that might be, something to take away if you like good Christmas reads. One of the things that I'm considering with Thomas Hardy, I have another of his books on my list for fall, is I noticed that he sometimes names his characters to match their personality. So I am kind of curious if that is true with all of his books, but in the two that I've read this year, I would say that's the case. So if you're a Thomas Hardy fan and you've read a lot, let me know. Am I right? Am I wrong? I'm not sure. So now we're moving into July. The next audiobook I finished in July was 39 Steps. I was familiar with the storyline because I remember years and years ago watching a black and white film by Alfred Hitchcock based on the book 39 Steps. So let's see, who's it by? It's by John Bacon. I hope I'm saying that right. It was a very clean adventure story. It's sort of like this spy thriller type vibe to it. And I thought it was very exciting. It's one of those where you accidentally fall into the story where it's like, oh, now I know this secret and people are trying to kill me. It's kind of like that. But I always say the book's better. This is one where I would say that's the case, but I still like the old movie. It's good. Boys in the Boat. I really liked this book, and I had seen the movie first. This was one where I flip-flopped. I didn't know there was a book, and I found the movie and was like, oh, it's a clean family movie. We'll watch it. And then I saw that it was based on a book. I'm like, okay, TBR that. And I found this at Goodwill for, I think, just $2. So I picked it up. I read it and I was so excited because so much of it is based in my home state of Washington, and even my hometown is mentioned in this book, which just thrilled me to pieces. Made me proud to be a Pacific Northwest native and to be proud of this team from the University of Washington that did such great things back in 1936. What I really liked about Daniel James Brown, he's the author, his writing is so readable. It's very historically accurate and it's packed full of facts and information, but it reads so well like a story that I didn't feel bogged down by the information at all. I couldn't put it down. I loved it. So good, and I was just blessed by it. So when we were on our trip to Greece, I took a bunch of mysteries with me. So there's 3 mysteries in a row. I took this Dorothy Sayers, The Unpleasantness at the Bologna Club. She is an excellent mystery writer. She's sort of like an elevated mystery writer in the sense that she's very British, and there's very British terminology and phraseology and things like that. But she will bring in things like Boethius and just challenge you to be an educated reader. And I love that about her. She is known in my circle of educators for an essay she wrote about education. So I love reading her writing and kind of seeing her put what she thinks is important, in her writing. And I love it. So I think her character, Lord Peter Wimsey, he's sort of like this wealthy man who, you know, he has a title and things like that. But it's post World War I. And he fought in the war, and it's created like that. He has some shell shock that he has to deal with from time to time. She brings some light to that, what that was like for the men who fought in that war. And I appreciate that very, very much. But a very fascinating mystery, made me think. Didn't quite guess the ending, and I love it when that happens. Any of the Lord Peter Wimsey books are good, but I really enjoyed this one. I brought Death on the Nile with me on the boat that we were on in the Mediterranean because I was like, oh my goodness, it's a cruise ship in the Mediterranean. And there were days where we could literally like see Egypt from where we were, so that was kind of fun. And it was a reread for me. I've read it before. And I also read Murder on the Orient Express, even though this one is set in wintertime. I remembered that the detective that helps Poirot in this one was Greek, and because we were going to Greece, I was like, oh yeah, this still works. It's travel themed. There's a Greek character. It's just so fun to read these sorts of books on vacation. So the next one I read was not a mystery. I actually brought this to kind of preview to possibly read to my class this year. It's a short little book by Marguerite de Angeli. Angeli, not sure. It's won the Newbery. It's about a young boy who gets very, very ill, and it's during the time of the plague. So he's lucky to have survived, but he ends up living in a monastery and being cared for by monks. And the monks who care for him are excellent teachers and just very patient and kind. There's a lot of takeaways as you're reading it. But it's really neat to see how this young man kind of like rises up even though he's been through this hard time and does great things. So a great story for kids, an encouragement even for an adult. But this would be such a good one again to read at Christmas because it ends at Christmas. And the last one I read in July, I actually read through all the books that I brought with me on the trip, and I was kind of bummed because I wanted something to read on the plane ride home. We had an 11-hour plane ride on the way home, and my sister very sweetly let me borrow a book that she had brought and finished, and that was The Last Bookshop in London. It was sweet. It talked about London during the Blitz, but didn't get too much into the gory details. That time period was horrific, and the challenges that people faced that lived in London at that time were just, to me, unimaginable. And I liked how this author touched on that and kind of pointed to it, but didn't make you like look at it and feast your eyes upon it. Like, she acknowledged it and you felt like the pain of it, but not in a super gory way. So I really appreciated that. The other thing that actually made me get teary-eyed was the main character in this book. She discovers this delight in connecting people with stories, and she ends up encouraging them through these really stressful air raids by reading them books. And just talking about it, I'm getting a little verklempt because that's something that really, really met some place in my heart, where I feel like stories help people so much. Stories, books, they can change your life. And I love that this main character discovered that and helped people through hard times with good stories. It kind of has a It's a Wonderful Life type feel, especially at the end. For me, every now and then a book like that is just, it's balm for the soul in a way. Getting into August, when we got back from our trip and I had like literally a mountain of laundry to fold, I listened to The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. That's by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and I listened to it on audio while I folded all the laundry, and I literally got through it in a few hours. It's a short audiobook, and it's kind of a weird story, and I didn't know that there was a movie about this one as well. I guess Brad Pitt played Benjamin Button. I had no idea. My husband was kind of teasing me about that. He was like, oh, did Brad Pitt narrate that? And I was like, why would Brad Pitt narrate that book? He filled me in. I have all the info now. The book was like an interesting concept, but kind of awkward. Like the idea of like a woman birthing a grown man. The next book I read in August was the next kind of like big long book that I have gotten to this summer that I've been wanting to read for a while. And that was All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Wow. I walked away from this book a little bit wrecked in the sense that I was just sad. You love the characters. His characters are so well developed. You love them. You want them all to make it through World War II. And they don't all make it. And I don't want to spoil it too much. But there's two main characters and you kind of follow them. He switches back and forth between the two main characters. And they kind of have separate storylines. And then at one point they come together and it's a way you wouldn't expect. And it's beautifully written. What I appreciated about this book, I've read a lot of World War II historical fiction. This one actually included an aspect of the war that I had never really considered, and that's the impact of radio. Definitely got me thinking in that regard. So I know this was made into a Netflix series. I've never watched it. I'm really grateful I read it, and I'm very proud of the author because he's local to Idaho. I finished a couple books just this last week, one being an audiobook. I listened to Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. So I've now read all three sisters, and that was kind of like a big accomplishment for me. That's something I really wanted to do. Anne Bronte's style of writing is probably the one I found the most approachable. I found this book on YouTube, the full audiobook for free, which was great. And what was pleasant about this book is the LibriVox recording, which is in the public domain. It has the different characters being read by different people. So it just made it really pleasant to listen to, and LibriVox recordings are free to listen to. So definitely worth it if you, again, need something to listen to. And I think that book was like 6.5 hours. So it took me about a week of listening while I was folding laundry or doing, kind of monotonous tasks to finish it. But I'm really glad I did because I really enjoyed that. So I definitely want to get a physical copy of that one because I enjoyed it so much. It was definitely like a look at a woman character being virtuous and a woman character being vain, very stuck in vanity, and sort of like going like this throughout the story and kind of looking at them together and letting the reader draw their own conclusions about what was worth it. The last book that I just finished a few days ago is this one, Breaking Bread with the Dead, A Reader's Guide to a More Tranquil Mind by Alan Jacobs. And you can see I have marked several little quotes. I haven't gone through. I like to write down the quotes sometimes in my journal, and I haven't gotten to that yet. So they're still just all waiting for me to get to that. A lot of good reading advice in here. The author's point, I think, is that don't throw away these old authors just because there's something in there that you don't agree with. Like maybe they're an anti-Semite, or maybe they're a womanizer, or there's some sort of drug abuse or something like that. Like for me with Dune, like I didn't toss out the whole book just because I didn't like the whole idea of concubines and stuff like that in that book. And it made me reflect on life in new ways. And I think that's his point, and he helps you in our modern sort of culture where it's like, okay, there's something in that's not culturally correct today. Throw it out, burn it. And he's saying, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Past cultures have done that. It's not a good idea. Here's how you do it. Here's how you look at books of those who, are dead, old authors, old books, and apply it to your life today. Take the good, set aside the bad, but appreciate the work for what it was in its time and how today it can still impact you. And I found that to be a very refreshing message. Again, short book, and something that you can get through quickly. And obviously, there was a lot in here I liked. So with that, I will be sharing more videos, hopefully kind of regularly. I want to do some sort of like plan of once or twice a month, talk about what I'm reading. I don't necessarily plan on flipping this channel to a full book channel because I still love sharing my thrift hauls with you guys and my decorating and things like that. I hope if you like this kind of video that you'll let me know. And again, any book suggestions for the fall, I will gladly take. I'm having a hard time finding like cozy reads for the fall that I haven't already read. So let me know what your favorite cozy book is for the fall, and I will definitely take a look. So you guys take care. Thank you so much for watching and sticking with me to the end of this video. It was a doozy to record. I'm happy to share books with you guys. This is my passion. It's really fun to share it with you guys because I love you all and I'm grateful that you're here. All right, you guys, take care. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be back with more soon. Bye.